Howdy guys, welcome back to another tutorial video. I got a lot of comments saying my videos were too slow, too boring, and too long, so I thought I'd make a quicker version of, my Minecraft one. So if you watch that, you probably won't learn nothing. But, well, oh, that is a pretty little boy right there. Oh my gosh, that bird is pretty like. Sorry. Anyway, let me just scroll through here just to show you what we got. So I'm just gonna scroll here. We got a nice little intro message right there. Welcome to the Codrops Museum. Some hover effects right over here. You can click on that and visit the page, and then from there it's just over, back, and looping right back to the home. So that's pretty much it for this experience. Very simple. You can find all the details on the Codrops article, as well as the code and blend file in the description below. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Yeah, so this video is primarily just going to focus on the unique things I did in Blender for this project specifically, rather than anything code related, as the Codrops article has all the code, as well as my Minecraft video. And if you need an introduction to materials, you can check out my other video on creating a room portfolio starting over here. I introduce lighting and materials and kind of all the way go up into creating first procedural material with vector math. And once you watch that segment, you should be able to follow this video pretty accurately. And yeah, the rest of the code is kind of on the Codrops article. And if you need a more beginner-friendly version, you can check out my Minecraft portfolio video. So when it comes to modeling something like this, it kind of seems a little bit daunting at first, but just because it's big doesn't actually mean it's difficult. And in fact, these models are actually very simple. So if you kind of take a look at some other artists, their block out, you can actually see it starts from very simple shapes like here. So while it definitely looks impressive, the overall modeling is actually a lot more simpler than something like a dog or a character or a car or something like that. These are actually very simple geometries. And you can just see that through my own Blender file. So this is the final one, which is why you see everything deleted that's not in the camera, but you can kind of visualize intuitively like, oh, this is probably like a cylinder of some sorts. This is probably like a plane that was extruded and sort of like that. This pillar is probably like a cylinder as well. So just getting that general intuition before you start modeling, really helps. So I'm in a new Blender file here, and I just want to show you that it's actually not as scary as it looks. So if I add a plane, for example, now I want to add a plane here because when I scale it up, for example, like over here, the origin point starts by default at the bottom, so I don't have to make any adjustments like that. Now we just need the house shape, so, well, we need more geometry, so we add a loop cut right there, just bring it up, and we kind of already have the start of our model. Now the next thing we need are our roof, right? And remember, when it comes to optimizing for the web, we actually want to delete faces that aren't going to be seen. So since we have a roof that's covering this whole thing, we might as well just create the roof from this instead of something else. I'm just going to p separate by selection, and now that becomes its own object. Now here the origin point is a little bit suspicious, and honestly it might not matter because we're probably likely only going to do it on the X and Y direction and not the Z direction. Otherwise you would just select all of them for the Z, but whatever. And then what you can do is Alt-E, extrude along normals, and then hit S to scale evenly. And then there you can see we kind of already have our roof just like that. And then at this point, if you want to, you can just actually delete this half with just like so. And then you can come over here and give it a mirror modifier. That way you don't have to do things twice. And then it'll be on the Y axis over here. Because I'm on the Y, you might have to do the X. And then what we can do is just select this over here, hit Alt-S to scale along the normals, and just bring that out just like that. And you pretty much already have that. And then SX, and we just bring it out like so. And then to cut out the arches, well then it's just going to be a cube. So we can add a cube and go into edit mode, just select these two, just Control B to bevel it, and then hit C to clamp it so it doesn't go through. And then we can just rescale it, so whatever we want to do. Maybe something like that, Shift E, G, Y. And this you can just do Control minus if you have the Boolean modifier in. So edit preferences, if I go to Boolean, you can see I have this bool tool right here. So that's the hotkey to add all these modifiers. When it comes to the decoration, it's actually not as scary as it looks. So if I shift and add a plane over here, let's just go into side view for this. So maybe this one over here. Let's do RX90. It's literally just a shape that I extruded in random corners, like until it looked pretty cool with a subdivision surface modifier. So here I'm literally just making a random shape. Actually, what I typically do is add a subdivision surface modifier first. And so I just did that with Control 2. Again, you can also just add modifier subdivision, something like that, and just scale it down You know, it's really up to you here, but you can see that all those complex shapes that you're seeing are literally just a subdivision surface modifier with planes like here. And, you know, maybe extrude it out, shade smooth, just like that. And there you kind of have that thing right there, GX, just like that. And the top roof is actually made exactly the same way as the arches in the front. So it's literally just going to be, so it's, again, it's just going to be really simple actually, but it's just going to be another plane. And, well, actually, I feel like a cube would be fine here, but just extrude upwards over here, add a loop cut, maybe extrude Alt E, extrude along normals, just like so. Over here, apply scale, and then maybe just select these. You could also cut this in half if you don't want to do it twice, but, and then just increase that just like so, something like this. And yeah, shade auto smooth, and there you kind of have the arch, and that's pretty much just a repeated pattern. Add array modifier and increase that just like that. So that's kind of that. When it comes to the pillar, it's just going to be a cylinder. So I'm gonna actually just add a circle, extrude it upwards in the Z direction, maybe hit F to fill, and then maybe hit I to inset, and then E to extrude, maybe scale it up a little bit, hit I, extrude, inset, then hit E, right click cancel, scale it up first, and then E and extrude up again. So there you can have like your pillar. So now for the tower, it's just going to be a cylinder. So again, I'm going to start from a circle, that way the origin point is at the bottom, but it doesn't really matter for this. I don't want 32 vertices because that'll be too many faces on every side. I think I'll bring it down to like 18 if I remember correctly. I don't actually know, but we can just guess. It's not really a big deal. So S Shift Z, just make it, you know, a little bit thick like that. And then what we can do is just select this whole top over here. And then we can come over to select and do checker deselect. And then we can do GZ. And now you can see we kind of have that pattern over there. But actually, before I do that, what I want to do is have the fill in this top. So I'm going to hit F just to fill that. And then maybe I'm just going to hit I just to inset a little bit. And then maybe just GZ, bring that up a little bit. I don't really know. Okay, now we can go back here, and then we're going to go to select, checker deselect, and just bring that down like so. And there we kind of have the start of the window thing already. This bottom looks a little bit too big, so I'm just going to bring that up just a little bit. But anyway, now you can see we have our thing over here. So now it's literally going to be the same thing for the bevel cube. I guess I shouldn't have deleted those, but anyway, we're just going to go for a cube over here. We're just going to come over here, and we're just going to control B, bevel it, turn on C so it clamps a little bit, and just increase that just like so. Right click, shade auto smooth. Ideally you want this to be in the same orientation as the other one, so what I'm going to do is probably rotate it like this, and I just want to make sure that I have the correct rotation. So it looks like 30 degrees, so I'm just going to make it 30 degrees so it's perfectly parallel. And just scale this down, SX, SY. And I don't actually want to cut it from the object itself. I mean, you can totally do it. The order doesn't really matter here, but I'm actually just going to separate this first. So I'm going to separate that by selection, so its own single thing. So now I'm just going to hold Alt to select that entire loop that's still there, and I'm just going to delete those because we don't need them anymore. So now we just have these three objects. Now we can just do this same thing, Control minus, and let's just apply that right now, just like this. We don't need this anymore. Again, if you don't want to apply your stuff in advance, it's totally fine as well. Okay, this is definitely a big cutout, but oh well, whatever. And now what we can do is just go into edit mode and hold Alt to select this loop right here, and just hit E and X and extrude it inwards just like that. Cool, that seems like exactly what I want for. And then this origin point is down there, so I'm actually going to queue origin to geometry. Then I'll do Shift S, cursor to selected, so it snaps right in the front over there. Now we can hit period key and change our pivot point to 3D cursor. Let's just show this in wireframe. So we did 18 vertices, which means there's going to be 9 of these, which means our angle to rotate is 40. So we can do Shift D, don't touch anything yet, just hit R, and then type in 40. And now you can just hit enter to confirm that. And now what you can do is just Shift R to repeat the last action that you did. And here you can see, now if I go back into solid view, we kind of have this just like so. And I guess I noticed I did extrude in a little bit too much, so that's kind of an issue, but you can fix that if you wanted to. We can just undo all of that. Additionally, what you can do instead, if you don't want to do that, is you can just cut it directly through the thing. The other way I was showing you is because you might have had like other objects that you wanted to join on each one, and it probably would have been easier just to do it like that. But if you just want cutouts and you don't really care, you can just create one like this, right? And now you can just Shift D, duplicate this, rotate it, Shift D, duplicate, rotate it. Well, sorry, we should have been more mathematically accurate. Well, just assume these are good at all accurate angles. And let's just do Control J just to join them. Right click, shade, auto smooth, just make sure. So this is our cutout. This is our object. Oops, this is our object. Same thing, Control minus, cut it out. This is not working for some reason. Is either because this isn't merged. Let's see, merge by distance. Let's check. Nope, it's still not working. It's probably because we need to apply our scale for both of these. Control A, apply scale. Cool. Now let's see if we can cut. Okay, yeah, now it cuts. And now you can see that it's working. Let's just apply that. Let's delete this. And here you can see, well, I guess I messed up the angle here, but you can kind of get the idea that this is the cutout. I don't know if you want to do that because there'll be some intersections, but if you want to, the ones that are across from each other, you can do Control E and bridge edge loops. Now, of course, now these aren't going to, well, they're going to overlap, but maybe you want that. That's totally okay as well. But, you know, just make sure you're not wasting texture space. Right, you could do something like this. Shift G, select similar area, like so. And I guess it's only selecting that side, but you could select multiple sides, maybe something like this. Shift G, select similar area. Hopefully you'll select these. Well, I guess it doesn't, but that's totally okay. You can select those, hit I to inset them, and then maybe Alt E, extrude along normals, just something like that. And now you can have like a pattern like that. Obviously, this looked like a mess, but you kind of get the general idea there. And then I guess I forgot to mention, but the faces over here, it's very, very similar. So I just selected all these faces over here, hit I just to inset them, and then just E extrude in there. And that's kind of all the decoration I did for the arches over there. Another thing I did a lot was use the knife tool. So you can imagine, well, let's just say this is the tower, and it's over here and it's kind of like blocking out a lot of the roof. You don't want to waste the texture space when over here. So adding the topology to cut it out is actually better than wasting texture space. So I'm just going to hit K for the knife tool. And okay, I can't edit it because I need to apply my mirror modifier. So I'm going to apply that. Let's go back into edit mode. Let's just, hit K. Just cut out behind over here. It doesn't really have to be accurate. And then to confirm it, you actually want to hit spacebar. I keep hitting enter and just from muscle memory. And this inside one is going to be the one we see on the inside, so we don't want to get rid of that. But we can get rid of this top one. And then I often just move the vertices a lot just to, you know, make it as large as possible of a hole where they won't notice it, just to take the least amount of texture space. Yeah, all in all, you know, everything was quite simple when it came to modeling. So hopefully that kind of gave you some insights. Yes, the topology is not great, but for this case, it actually has no effect on the end result and speeds up significantly faster if you have bad topology. So that's kind of why I went for a bad topology approach for this project. For the mountains in the back, all I did was just add a bunch of cubes around and just shift deduplicate them until I got something I like, and I just made them really large. So kind of just like so, honestly, just move it around until you get something that you like. And when you get something you like, just select all of them. Doesn't really matter which one's active, just join them together so it's one single object. And then what we can do is go into sculpting mode. And in order to sculpt properly, we need a lot more vertices than we have right now. So sculpting, if you think about it, is just the idea that you're displacing some sort of vertice with some sort of math function, which we call brushes. And there's different kind of brushes. So here you can see I'm on the draw brush. If I come over here, and you can see that it's going to pretty much move my vertice. You know, it's going to try to draw that, or in this case, move that vertice, kind of like that. But we only have one vertex, so it kind of looks a little bit weird. So what we can do is come over to remesh over here, change this to like 0.01, and hit remesh. And now if I go into edit mode, you can see like there's a lot more vertices here. So now when I go into sculpt mode and I try drawing, you can see that it's going to displace those vertices just like that. And then of course you have a lot of different other brushes over here that do different things. So if you hold shift, it'll smooth, kind of like so. And the general idea is just to get rid of the blocky shape. So one thing that I really like to use is the clay strips brush. And it's a really, really nice way just to quickly get rid of things. So you can like do this, you know, and you kind of get like a nice sort of rock texture kind of already. There's a lot of more other methods when it comes to sculpting, but that's pretty much all I did. It was mainly just basic sculpting. I didn't really do anything fancy. I didn't use any custom rock brushes. I didn't use any custom sort of thing. Literally just clay brush, smooth tool and then holding control to invert it sometimes, holding shift and sometimes, and that was pretty much all I did. And then I just let the texture take care of the rest. You can imagine this is kind of like how the most of my mountain actually looks. So it doesn't look really too pretty, but the texture kind of just made up for all of that. So when you're done, of course, you have all these vertices, which is going to be really, really bad for the browser. So what you can do is add a decimate modifier just for this, which I talked about a little bit in a previous video, and kind of just bring that down. So what else you can do first is you can go into face select and do unsubdivide. By the way, if your computer is lagging, you can remesh at a higher value. I don't think you need this many vertices. I just did that because that's what my computer could handle. So you can go into face select and go into right click and just do unsubdivide. And this will get rid of a lot of faces. So you can see that I'm at 1,121,832. Now you can see the face count is only 222,000 after unsubdividing. I think you can go one more time and it should be fine. Yeah, so if I right click shade smooth, you can see that actually this is perfectly fine actually. And then I still have my decimate thing here, so I can bring that even lower. And when you start noticing a little bit of sus things, by the way, you should have your texture on here so you can tell if it's actually affecting anything or whatnot. But over here, you can see that, okay, this is looking a little bit weird now. So I think I'm starting to lose some quality here, but I don't think it's going to affect my texture too much. So what I can actually do is probably apply my decimate modifier now. And then just to patch up some of these, we can go back into sculpt mode and maybe hold shift just to smooth out some of these issues over here. Yeah, so it looks really, really bad because I did not spend time at all on it, but definitely make it look a little bit nicer. But I think intuitively this is actually perfectly fine as well. So let me actually just let's go into the shader editor. Let's go into rendered view, and I'm just gonna quickly add a sky texture over here, just like so. Nothing really too special. Let's just tone down the strength just a little bit. Cool, and let's go search for a mountain texture with Blender Kit, mountain or rock or something, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to select one arbitrarily that looks nice. This looks pretty cool. I'm just going to put it on there. Looks super nice. And then what we can do is just go into the UV editor and well, actually, let's apply our scale first. Apply our scale. Let's go into edit mode, use smart UV project, unwrap, and just scale it up. Oh, this one's procedural. It's not UV mapped. But as you can see, it's actually not too bad. Let's find something that's probably UV mapped. I don't know, maybe this one. Let's check this one. Okay, yeah, this one's UV mapped. So let's just do it again. Let's unwrap here. And let's just hit A to select everything and scale it up. And you can see that, yeah, that was completely, this looked so weird, but when you actually have the texture on it, it doesn't look too bad at all. Of course, now it's a little bit too blocky because I didn't sculpt it, but you can see, if you just imagine you sculpt it like this. Of course, you definitely want to polish it up. This looks very, very bad, but of course, even after everything, like all the decimate and everything, you can always go back and just adjust it with your brushes and things like that, just to polish it up a little bit after you add the texture. So on and so forth. But I hope you kind of see, like, yeah, you really, really don't need any sort of good sculpting skills to get a nice result. Like, it's only just about having fun, for sure. I will say it's going to be a very iterative process. So if you sculpt a little bit too much, even though your texture's over here, it might start looking a little bit distorted, and you probably have to unwrap again, and then sculpt again, and then unwrap again, and so on and so forth. So totally normal as well to do that. Okay, so now I just want to talk a little bit about some of the materials that I used. So very, very basic. I think all of them either came from BlenderKit or from Polyhaven. So the two very, very popular websites for PBR materials. So most of them was really just two PBR materials mixed together and maybe a little bit color adjustment. So here you can just see I have the standard PBR material, and then I made some color adjustments to that one. So they're in a node group. That's why it looks like that. If you don't know what that is, that's totally okay. It's pretty much just taking the entire thing and putting it inside another node, so it's a little bit more clean. And then I'm just using some sort of random noise here as the mask to mix between the two PBR materials. So if I hit M to mute this, you can see my cracks for the other PBR material are gone, just like so. And then if I go to the color ramp and adjust the thing, you can see, okay, now we're seeing more of that crack material. And let's the brick one. And of course you can adjust the color ramp accordingly just to control the fall off and the mask and everything like that. And then also and then of course you have the noise texture to change to a mask, however you want to mask it. I just used a noise texture because that's the first thing that came to my mind, not any reason in particular why I decided to choose that. So when it came to the painting, I had the original image here, which is just a screenshot of the web page. So if I switch it up, you can see, yeah, it's just a screenshot of the web page. And then I just plugged it into a bunch of mix nodes and just mixed it with a bunch of noise of different colors. And then also another image texture over here just to give it a little bit more variety to the color itself. This is not a PBR material. I was just doing it to adjust the color itself. So you can see if I take it out there and plug it back in, that kind of has that sort of effect there. You could probably get away not using another image texture to add details, but I did because I just wanted to see how it looked, and it kind of worked out there. And then for all these painting cracks over here, that is where the second UV map over here that comes in. I'm using a second UV map here called Paint, and this is my baking one, but Paint, it adjusts where this PBR material is mapping, which is going to be peeling paint. So you can see it kind of looks like a little bit of peeling paint right there. So if I go into edit mode and select this over here with paint selected, and sorry, let me go into my UV editor. You can see as I move the UV around, the cracks are going to move around wherever the painting is, you can see, just like so. So that's kind of all I did there, which is why I used a mix shader node. And the image itself didn't really have any displacement. You could make a map based on the color as a displacement and mix the displacement as well, but I just put the peeling paint directly into the displacement. Honestly, even if you take this out and bake it, it probably wouldn't make too much of a difference, but I just left it in there. As you can see, that you would be baking a little bit few details there as well. Again, that would just be the color itself because this is just a flat plane. There's no actual vertices being displaced, but it does affect the appeal of the lighting apparently. And yeah, that's pretty much it for all the materials. I mean, everything else is just a combination of trial and error, but that was probably the more complex one over there. I think for most of them, I just mixed it with itself with a different shade. So here, I think this is like the same thing. This is just, yeah, you can see stone floor over here, and I'm going to assume this is stone floor as well. Yeah, this is also stone floor, so all I did was change the color of stone floor, the same exact PBR material, and I just mixed it based on a noise texture just to give it a little bit more variety on the floor. So you can see when I hit mute, it kind of is stayed this one color. Of course, the texture itself already has variety, but then I add a little bit more variety with another mix shader based on this noise texture right here. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the materials. I mean, I didn't really do anything complicated. I didn't follow any sort of realistic workflow. I didn't follow any sort of best practices. I just smashed things together that I thought would look nice until they did. It was really just about having fun and trial and error. So nothing really too scary at all there. So when it comes to the trees, I just used one and then instanced the rest of them in code. But I used Botaniq, which is a really popular one. So you can check that out in the description below. But they have some really awesome assets that you can use. So if I search up tree here, and you can see they have a bunch of really amazing assets over here. And you can just shift right click somewhere, click it, and it'll spawn the tree over there. And then you can adjust it accordingly. Lots of options that you can play around with and so on and so forth. So that's pretty much all I did. And you can see they don't actually model out each individual leaf. It's actually an image on a plane. So if I go to render view, you can see that it's going to be an image on the plane, just like so. So for the background image, all I did was, I think it was actually this part, but I went into wireframe, just selected a portion of my mountain. Then I shift deduplicate, right click cancel, piece separate by selection. So now it's its own thing. GX, just move it somewhere where anything. Just make sure the lighting is okay. I mean, I went with a very flat lighting setup, which means I can move it pretty much anywhere and the lighting probably wouldn't really change about it. And anyway, it's also a background element, so no one's really going to be paying attention, and it's kind of covered by fog. And then now all you have to do is just come into your render properties and then search for a film, open film, and just click transparent. And now you have a transparent background. And then when you output, make sure you have a file format that supports an alpha channel, like a PNG, for example. And then you can just go to like an orthographic view or whatever camera view you want to go. And oh, sorry, camera. So I'm just gonna snap the camera over there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then just adjust the camera, adjust your output settings, until you render an image that you want. And then you just hit F12 to render, and then you UV map it back to the mountain later. And that's the same exact thing I did with the waterfall. So here you can see this is what the waterfall was, and then I did this just to make sure it would look nice when I changed it in the texture over there. Yeah, that's pretty much it for the Blender section. I know I went a little bit fast, so if you have questions, feel free to post a comment or reach out. But as you can see, I didn't really do any sort of advanced topics here when it came to Blender. Very simple models and very simple texturing workflow. Oh, sorry, one last thing is just exporting. I didn't do anything differently from my room portfolio or my Minecraft portfolio one. I just split it up accordingly like so and exported, 10 or 11, 12 different models. I don't actually remember. I think it was 12. So here you can see that I used the same npx gltf jsx just to convert them into each model. And then I have my custom hook here to load with ktx2 textures, which I found gave the smallest file size with the best quality, which is why I went with basis textures again here. So for the rest of the code, it's very, very similar to my Minecraft video. I did make a few more improvements, which I highlighted in the Codrops article, so you can totally check that out. But one thing I do want to touch on that I didn't touch on in my Minecraft video is testing. And for testing, what I really like to use is called BrowserStack, and they have a very, very generous free tier, I think. So I feel like you can test like over 20 devices before you have to buy something. So you can see I'm still on my free trial and it hasn't run out yet, but I generally like to go for the older phones. So here you can see I tested iPhone 12 as my lowest one, I think. So maybe we can try the iPhone 13 Pro Max over here. And then here, if I hit enter, you can see that it's going to lag because obviously we have a remote connection over here, but it's a good way to test to make sure it works on a real device. And definitely make sure to check iPhones specifically, and specifically the Safari browser as well, because those are known to have most of the issues with 3D experiences and WebGL and sort of things like that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. You can check the Codrops articles for a lot more detail if you want to dive into it a little bit more. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Until then, I do hope to see ya in my next video. And until then, take care, peace out, and yeah, peace out. See you guys.